At our rehearsal dinner, she said she was settling for me, so I canceled the wedding and took a solo honeymoon. 6 months later, her family is begging me to take her back. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. It's been 6 months since I should have gotten married. Right now, I'm sipping a margarita on a beach in Bali, and the only thing I feel is the sun on my skin. It's a far cry from the rehearsal dinner where my world quietly ended. That night, everything was perfect, or at least it was a perfect facade. The restaurant was all soft lighting and the low hum of happy conversation. My father had given a heartfelt speech. Her mother had cried joyful tears, and our friends had clinked their glasses until I thought the crystal would break. I remember looking at Sarah, my fiancée, her auburn hair catching the light, a serene smile on her face. And I felt like the luckiest man alive. I had spent the last year of my life making this wedding, her dream wedding, a reality. I'd taken on extra projects at work to pay for the band she wanted. I'd spent weekends taste-testing cakes I didn't care about, and I'd soothed every one of her pre-wedding anxieties. I was all in. She was my future. Later, back at our apartment, the silence felt heavy after the night's noise. Confetti from some well-wisher's pocket was still tangled in her hair. I was buzzing with a quiet, happy exhaustion, untangling my bow tie. "We did it," I said, grinning at her. "One more day." She didn't smile back. She was standing by the window, staring out at the city lights, a half-empty glass of red wine dangling from her fingers. She'd been quiet during the car ride home. "Hey," I said, my smile fading. "Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours? You've been quiet all night." She took a long sip of wine, not turning around. "It's nothing, just tired." "Sarah, come on, I know you." I walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. She stiffened slightly. A cold little knot began to form in my stomach. "Is it the flowers? Did your aunt say something? Whatever it is, we can fix it." She finally turned to look at me, and her eyes were glassy, unfocused. Not from tears, but from the wine. A lot of wine. I can't stop thinking about Mark," she slurred, her voice low and thick. The name hit me like a physical blow. Mark, her ex, the one from college, the one with the motorcycle and the trust fund. The one who'd broken her heart and in doing so had carved a permanent space in her mythology as the one who got away. I forced a calm I didn't feel. "That's normal, babe. Big life changes bring up old memories. It's just cold feet. That's the past. We're the future." She let out a short, bitter laugh that had no humor in it. Is it the past?" She looked me up and down, a dismissive, almost pitying glance. "You're so safe. You're the responsible choice. You have a 401k. You remember to get the oil changed. You're the man you settle for." Each word was a tiny, precise incision. Safe, responsible, settle. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" My voice was tight. "We're getting married tomorrow." "I know!" she almost shouted, throwing her hands up. A little wine sloshed onto the floor. "And all I can think about is that Mark. He was the one I wanted to marry. He was passion and chaos and life. You're a checklist, a good job, a stable home, a reliable husband. I'm marrying you because it's the smart thing to do, not because you're the one." The room tilted. The air vanished. It was as if she had taken the entire foundation of our relationship, the 4 years we'd spent together, the future I'd so carefully built in my head, and smashed it on the floor between us. She wasn't crying. She wasn't apologetic. She was just stating facts, as if she'd finally admitted a truth she'd been holding on to for years. And there was a resentful relief in it. She was resentful at me for being the safe option, for being the plan B. I just stood there staring at her. The man who remembered her mother's birthday, who learned how to make her favorite pasta from scratch, who held her hair back when she was sick. The man who had just stood in front of 100 people and beamed with pride to be her husband. I was the settlement, the reliable, financially sound, emotionally stable compromise. She looked at my face, at the shock and pain that must have been plain to see. And her expression softened for a second, muddled by the alcohol. "Oh, don't look at me like that. You had to know. On some level, you had to know." I didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. Every argument, every time she'd been distant, every compromise I'd made that she'd accepted with a sigh instead of a kiss, it all snapped into a new, horrifying picture. The puzzle was complete, and it was ugly. I turned and walked away from her. I went into the guest bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just processed. The cold knot in my stomach had melted and was now a vast, hollow stillness. The silence in the apartment was absolute. Outside, the world kept turning, completely unaware that my future had just been erased. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark of the guest room, the city's ambient light painting stripes across the floor. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. It was like a fog had lifted from my entire life, revealing a landscape I'd been unwilling to see. All those times she'd been distant, all the little criticisms about my unadventurous career. The way her enthusiasm for our future always felt performative. It wasn't my insecurity, it was the truth. I had been a utility, a reliable stepping stone on her path to the life she thought she deserved. The man who loved her would have been shattered. The man she thought I was, the safe, accommodating pushover, would have begged, would have tried to win her back, would have accepted the crumbs of her conditional affection. But that man was gone. He'd been dismantled by a single drunken confession. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds, I moved. I was a machine programmed by a new, simple directive: self-preservation. I packed a single suitcase with practical clothes, my passport, my laptop, and a few personal items. I left behind everything she had given me, everything that was ours. In the quiet of the morning, the only sounds were the soft zip of the bag and the distant hum of a city waking up. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The browser was still open to our wedding website, a picture of us beaming back at me. I felt nothing. I closed the tab and went to a travel site. Our honeymoon was a 2-week all-inclusive resort in Bali. I booked a one-way ticket to Denpasar for that afternoon, then found a smaller, quieter villa on a different part of the island and reserved it for a month. The charges to my credit card felt like acts of liberation. Then the hardest part, the email. I opened a new message and addressed it to the entire wedding guest list. I didn't explain, I didn't defend, I didn't accuse. I stated, subject wedding cancellation. Dear friends and family, due to irreconcilable differences discovered last night. The wedding between Sarah and myself on date is officially canceled. I apologize for the short notice and any inconvenience this causes. There will be no further discussion on this matter. Sincerely, my name. I took a deep breath, said Sarah and her parents, and hit send. It was 6:17 a.m., the nuclear option. It wasn't cruel, it was necessary. It was a preemptive strike against the inevitable wave of manipulation, the twisted narrative she would spin to make herself the victim. This way, the facts were laid bare without drama. The wedding was off. The why was none of their business, but the irreconcilable differences would do all the whispering for me. I stood up, took one last look around the apartment that was no longer my home, and walked out the door. I didn't look at the closed bedroom door. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing more to say. At the airport, I turned off my phone and dropped it into my carry-on. The silence was deafening, and then it was peaceful. I bought a book at the newsstand, ordered a coffee, and waited at the gate. People bustled around me, lives moving in 1,000 different directions. Mine was now pointing in only one direction. The flight was long and quiet. I watched movies I didn't see, ate food I didn't taste. My mind was a blank slate wiped clean of the future I had planned. There was no plan anymore. There was only the next moment and the one after that. When I landed in Bali, the humid, fragrant air was a shock to the system. I got to my villa, a simple, beautiful space overlooking the ocean, and finally powered on my phone. It buzzed and vibrated for a full minute, a frantic digital seizure. Dozens of missed calls, a torrent of text messages and emails. I scrolled through the notifications without opening a single one. Sarah, her mom, her dad, her friends, a few of mine. I didn't read them. I placed the phone on the nightstand, walked out to the terrace, and watched the sun set over the water. The silence here was different. It wasn't the silence of something broken. It was the silence of something new beginning. The unfairness of it all was still there, a dull ache, but it was already being overshadowed by a profound, unexpected sense of freedom. She was gone and I was here. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. For 2 weeks, I existed in a state of blessed numbness. I woke with the sun, practiced yoga on the terrace, spent my days reading on the beach or exploring the island on a rented scooter. I didn't speak to anyone beyond polite greetings to the villa staff. The silence was my sanctuary. I was untouchable. The world I'd left behind felt like a distant, poorly written play, but a part of me knew the curtain hadn't fully fallen. On the 14th day, a strange sense of duty, or perhaps just morbid curiosity, compelled me. I sat on my terrace, the Indian Ocean sprawling endlessly before me, and powered on my phone. It immediately erupted. A cascade of notifications, one after another, painting a digital portrait of panic. 47 missed calls, 112 new text messages, countless emails. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, but I breathed through it. This was just admin, cleaning up the last remnants of a failed project. I started with the texts from Sarah. They were a timeline of her unraveling. From Sarah, day 1, 8:04 a.m. What the hell are you doing? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. My parents lost thousands. Call me back and stop being a child. From Sarah, day 1, 2:31 p.m. Okay, I'm sorry. I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it. We can work this out. Call me. From Sarah, day 3, 10:15 p.m. Are you seriously not going to talk to me? My mom is hysterical. Everyone is asking questions. You need to fix this. From Sarah, day 7, 11:47 p.m. I talked to Mark. He laughed at me. He said I was crazy. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? I paused there. So the fantasy had crumbled upon contact with reality. A small, cold part of me acknowledged the poetic justice, but I felt no satisfaction. It was just data. Then the voicemails. Her mother's voice, sharp with faux concern and real fury, pierced the Balinese calm. My name, this is Carol. This is ridiculous. Sarah made a mistake. She had too much to drink and said some things she didn't mean. Every couple has fights. You need to be the bigger man and come home. We have deposits we can't get back. The florist is threatening to sue. Think of the financial burden you're placing on this family. Be an adult and call us. The guilt trip was as transparent as it was ineffective. Their financial burden, their humiliation. My role, as always, was to absorb the consequences and make things neat for them again. The text from Sarah grew more desperate, then shifted back to anger. From Sarah, day 10. My friends are saying you're a psycho for sending that email. No one does that. They all think you overreacted. From Sarah, day 12. Please, I can't sleep. I can't eat. I've lost everything. It was a stupid fantasy. You're the real thing. I know it now. Please just call me. I need to hear your voice. That one almost got to me. The raw need in it. The old me would have crumbled. The new me saw it for what it was. Not an apology, but a plea for a return to the status quo where she was adored and I was reliable. She wasn't missing me. She was missing her safety net. I knew I had to do it. I had to sever this last tie. I took a deep breath, centered myself in the sound of the waves, and pressed the button to call her. She picked up on the first ring. Oh my God, you finally called. Her voice was raw, choked with tears. It was a stark contrast to the resentful slur of our last conversation. Sarah, I said, my voice even and detached. You ruined everything, she wailed, the anger returning instantly. How could you do this to me? Do you know what I've been through? I didn't ruin anything, I replied, the calm in my voice unnerving even me. You told me the truth. I simply believed you. It was the wine talking, she cried, the script flipping back to pleading. You know I love you. Mark means nothing. It was just a stupid fantasy I held on to. You're my reality. I'm not your fantasy, Sarah, and I won't be your settlement, I said, the words feeling definitive and clean. Goodbye. Wait, don't you dare hang up on... I ended the call. The silence returned, deeper and more profound than before. It was done. I blocked her number. A sense of finality washed over me. I extended my villa rental for another month. A few days later, my phone rang with an unknown number with a familiar area code. I knew who it was. I let it go to voicemail. The notification popped up. I listened, my expression unchanging. It was her father, David. His voice was a low, controlled rumble, the one he used when he was trying to sound reasonable but was secretly furious. "Son," the message began, the word feeling like a threat. "You've made your point, now it's time to stop this nonsense. A man stands by his woman even when she stumbles. What you did running away, that email, that's not how a man handles things. You come back, you marry my daughter, and we'll put this behind us. The family is prepared to forgive your moment of weakness, but this silence ends now. Call me." I didn't hesitate. I called the number back. He answered on the first ring. "I knew you'd see sense," he said, a note of smug victory in his voice. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my tone polite, professional, and utterly devoid of warmth. I was a customer service rep closing a troublesome ticket. "I'm calling in response to your message." "Good. Now let's talk about getting you on a flight home. We can have a small private ceremony." I cut him off. That's no longer a viable option. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "What did you say to me?" "The contract," I continued calmly, "was voided upon breach of its fundamental terms. I suggest you direct your future concerns to the individual responsible for the breach. Have a good day." I hung up. I sat there for a long time watching the geckos skitter across the ceiling. There were no more calls, no more texts. The digital siege was over. I had faced the army and they had found my walls impenetrable. For the first time I felt it not as a numbness but as a quiet, unshakable strength. The hollowness was gone. In its place was peace. 6 months to the day after the non-wedding, I was back. Not to the old apartment. I terminated that lease from Bali, but to a new life. I'd found a modern loft in a part of the city I'd always loved, but Sarah had deemed not our style. It was all exposed brick and large windows filled with light and pieces I'd chosen for myself. A thriving fiddle-leaf fig tree stood where her fussy decorative vases used to be. I was tanner, fitter, and the quiet in my mind was no longer a temporary escape but a permanent residence. I was unpacking a box of books, a record spinning some ambient jazz in the background, when the buzzer rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the intercom. "Yes." A staticky pause, then a voice I knew too well, thin and strained. It's me." The sound was like a faint echo from a forgotten dream. There was no anger, no fear, just a mild curiosity. I pressed the button to unlock the main door. I didn't say come up. She would anyway. A few minutes later, a soft knock. I opened the door. Sarah stood there, a ghost of the woman from the rehearsal dinner. Her shoulders were hunched. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore a simple jacket and jeans, a far cry from her usual curated style. She looked small, defeated. Her eyes scanned me quickly, then darted past me into the apartment, taking in the high ceilings, the warm lighting, the clear evidence of a life lived well without her. A flicker of confusion and something that looked like hurt crossed her face. "You look good," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Can I help you with something, Sarah?" I asked. My tone was polite, detached, the same as when I'd spoken to her father. The formality seemed to break something in her. The carefully constructed dam of pride crumbled, and the tears started, silent and fast. "I've lost everything," she choked out, wrapping her arms around herself. "My friends, they don't return my calls. My parents, they look at me like I'm a failure. I had to move back home. I've lost everything. I was so stupid. I miss you. I miss us. We can still have that life, the one we planned, please." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading, expecting to see a reflection of her own pain, a crack in my calm. She found none. "There is no us, Sarah," I said, my voice even and soft. "There's the person I was who built his life around you and the person I am now. That man you settled for, he doesn't exist anymore." She shook her head, frantic. "No, that's not true. You're still in there. I know you are. You love me." "I did," I acknowledged. And for the first time I felt a faint pain of sadness for that naive, loyal man. Not for her. But you didn't just break my heart, you freed me. You showed me I was building a life on a foundation of someone else's contempt, and the life I'm building for myself now. I gestured around the sunlit loft at the peace that was almost palpable. Is one I would never settle for. The shift was instantaneous. The desperation in her eyes hardened into a familiar sharp anger. The real Sarah, cornered and denied, finally showed her face. "So that's it," she spat, her voice losing its tremble and gaining an ugly, shrill edge. "You're just going to throw away years over one stupid comment. You're going to let your pride destroy everything we had. You're a coward. You ran away instead of fighting for us." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at her, and in that look I conveyed everything. The total and absolute revocation of her power over me. "No," I said, my final word firm and definitive. "A coward would have married you anyway, knowing he was second choice. I chose myself, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Don't come here again." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't slam the door. I closed it calmly, the solid click of the latch echoing in the hallway with a sense of profound finality. I stood there for a moment, listening. I heard a choked sob, then the sound of her footsteps retreating, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. I turned back to my apartment. The record had reached the end of its side, and the only sound was the gentle, rhythmic tick, tick, tick of the needle in the run-out groove. I walked over, lifted the arm, and placed it back at the start. The music swelled again, filling the space. I picked up a book from the box and found my place. The sun was lower now, casting long, warm shadows across the floor. I felt the quiet not as an absence, but as a presence, a completeness. She was a closed chapter, a lesson learned, a ghost finally laid to rest. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. All that remained was the quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be, and she was no longer any part of it. She was irrelevant, and the feeling wasn't victory, it was peace. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.